How are you
How are
doing?
you?
Okay, and you?
Good.
Out of the hospital, everything regulated?
Yeah.
You can't get away with anything around here. Everybody finds out.
See what's happening in the world.
Quaker State and Luga. I don't like them wraps.
They had. Hello, how are you? Oh, great. One of the things was sunglasses.
All right, I will call this meeting to order at 7:05 p.m. Adequate notice of this meeting has been given to the Express Times and Star Gazette, satisfying the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act. If we could please stand for a silent prayer and flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the January 6, 2015 meeting?
It was a long meeting, and I'll move it.
Second.
Becker?
Yeah.
Black?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Angeli?
Yes.
Kern?
Yes. Okay, do I have a motion to pay the bills presented in proper form signed by the director of each department and approved by the majority of the members listed on the bill list?
I think last time we had a question about that $1,000. What's the story on that?
It was taken care of.
Can I have some background?
Well, we read what the statute said, and that's it. Would you like to further explain?
Yeah, if you'd like me to, there was a fine that was issued, and 50% was to go to the fire penalty, 50% was to be set aside for the fire company for purchase of equipment. So Mary reviewed the statute, and we do have a specifically designated trust, or other trust, and we do have a specifically designated line item for fire company purchase of equipment. So rather than physically pay over that $1,000 to the fire company, the decision had been made to pay ourselves and set that money aside in a specified trust for purchase of fire.
Thank you.
That was a quick check.
Yes,
Yes.
that's
There were two. There was one in either November or December, and then one just earlier this month.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so is there a motion for the bills?
I'll make it.
Is there a second?
Is everybody done signing?
Yes.
I'll second it.
Okay, Becker?
Yes.
Black?
Yes.
Bailey? Yes. Angeli?
Yes.
Yes. Public comment pertaining to agenda items. Any public comment on any agenda items only? Seeing none.
I do.
Oh.
Ingrid Gray, 7 Snyder's Road. Oh, okay. This public comment refers to the budget that you have, and I just want to give my personal gratitude publicly to Frank Becker, who has all of this knowledge and financial acumen that he's using for the benefit of the township to keep on top of things. And that's a very tough job. And me being unable to keep track of my checkbook, I really, truly appreciate that he's dedicated his talents to the township, and especially with regards to such a huge problem like our budget. So thank you, Frank.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other,
Lorraine does the yeoman's work here.
any other public comment on agenda items? Seeing none, we will go to the engineer's report.
Don Grube, Chief Greenmeyer, and I attended the Warren County All Hazard Mitigation Planning meeting last month. I did send a synopsis of it to council. The first 6 workshops that they distributed was really like the first round of homework. They're due on Thursday. We have another mandatory meeting in March, either March 6th or March 20th. And at that time, they'll be giving us more homework to do. The first meeting was very confusing, to say the least. They threw a lot of information out. Some of it was kind of conflicting. Everybody left thinking we had to have a public hearing before the February 19th deadline. That's not the case. When they have public hearings, they're actually going to hold them, the county themselves, so each municipality doesn't have to advertise and have their own. So I've been working on filling out the worksheets. Don Group's been helping, Wendy, and I think that Susan. So we should have them pretty far along by the 19th. But they're also going to assist us in completing them if there's questions at the one of the March meetings. So if anybody has any other questions about that, let me know.
I appreciate that report because I had heard some different things about that. That was very extensive, so thank you.
And Don Group received a call from yet another FEMA person who wants to help us close out Hurricane Sandy. So I called her 3 times and left messages and have not heard back from her. But I think we're owed about somewhere in the vicinity of $40,000 from them. And I just wondered if council's made a decision on Foch Boulevard yet. We have the $185,000 grant, and I'd like to just let them know as soon as we could if we're going to use it so that they can put it back in the fund. If we go back into a discretionary aid fund, which is how we got our money for River Road and Maple Avenue, so it'd be nice to have it back in the pool for any other emergency.
If we did give it back, would it damage our chances for getting another?
I think the sooner we give it back, it's better, and I don't think so.
I think we should give it back. I mean, it's nice to have the money, but the money that we'd have to come up with to fix Foch Boulevard, which isn't used that much anyway.
And listening to the budget comments that you've been making, I thought you probably weren't going to use it, but I figured the sooner we can get it back to them, the better.
Okay.
Maybe I'll draft up something. And
What do we have to do by resolution or?
I don't even know. Maybe make a motion, I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe just make a motion to say you respectfully have to decline these registrations.
Yeah, and I'll call my contact people at the state too and just, let them know.
Yeah, see how procedurally they want to do it, and then I think we could probably be in a position to make a move at our next meeting.
Oh, okay.
So if you're not, we'll get it to you, whatever the.
Okay, I'll call them. All right, that's all I have.
I'm remembering something. I was going over some notes the other day, and I saw something, and this may have been solved a long time ago, but I saw some notes that said $400,000 from some grant from state police or something from way back when that we were awaiting.
Yeah, that was another FEMA.
Yeah.
We waited. We did get that a year or so ago. Last year, was it? Yeah.
That's how old my notes.
And we have. There's still some outstanding from Hurricane Irene too.
Thank you.
But I mean, eventually they get it to us, and I did look through our records, and we've received since the 2004 Hurricane Ivan, we've received $2 million from FEMA.
Wow.
It's definitely, this hazard mitigation plan is not to be taken lightly. If you don't participate, that is gone. So, and that, although it destroyed our roads, we were able to rebuild them a lot better condition than they were to begin with. So it, it benefited our infrastructure.
And Donnie does a good job with having the township make certain declarations at certain points so that if they are handing out any type of funds, we're eligible. So it is a good thing that we have going with that.
And he's meticulous. Like,
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like it with filling out their FEMA form work, which is not an easy task, but he's amazing with it. All right, just in time for the report.
Not bad.
Sorry, Mayor, I'm a bit late there to replow my driveway. I really don't have much in terms for public consumption. I think we need a brief executive session for a contract issue and a possible litigation issue. Really, legally speaking, not much has happened in the last couple of weeks since the last meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Just executive.
Very good. I guess we will then move on to council reports, and we'll begin with Frank.
Okay, well, I think most of my subject matter is the budget, which is on the agenda, so I'll leave it for that. The only other thing I had was that for the PHC, the Historic Commission, we still haven't met in December or January. Sharon Smith, the secretary, has broken her shoulder, so that's kind of put a damper on our meetings. I think the next meeting's February 25th, but I'm not sure whether that's going to happen yet or not. So it's been quiet on the Historic Commission front, and we'll talk about the budget in a little while. I'm sorry. The Historic Commission didn't meet in January or December or January, and it may or may not meet in February. Sharon Smith, the secretary, broke her shoulder, and so it wasn't happening. So there wasn't much to report on the Historic Commission, and the other subject I usually cover is the budget and the finances. And we're going to talk about that later. So I have nothing to add right now on that. We'll talk about that in a little while.
Thank you, Frank. Dave?
Mayor, the Environmental Commission met last night. It was a brief meeting. There was not a whole lot of discussion. Sharon Smith is also our secretary for the Environmental Commission, so we took our own notes. We talked a little bit about the community garden. With the snow outside, it's kind of a thing that you think's far away, but there was some discussion on getting that ready. Other than that, there was not a whole lot of other business. The meeting was rather short. It was over by 7:30. Land Use Board, the last meeting we had, I believe there was only one thing before us, was the cellular tower that was an after-the-fact variance down by the pallet factory in Warren Glen. Other than that, there was no other things that stood out at that meeting. The road department, I don't have a real whole lot to discuss or say. They were out over the weekend fighting the drifts in those snowstorms. Continued problem areas, Carpentersville Road, Oberly Road, just drifting issues. We're going to see if we can address them in a different manner maybe next year. Little preventative things. Other than that, I don't think I really have a whole lot other than that at this time, Mayor.
The one thing I did want to say about the plowing was I think there's still the county is still in a dispute with Walmart as far as some of the plowing that's getting done up there, because the Bliss and the Greenwood Street just seem like there's discrepancy over who's supposed to be
Plowing those.
Well, I sent a letter when before the first snowstorm we got way back in November last year. The issue there is as Glenn knows, we've been fooling around trying to get final deeds for the new piece of Bliss, and the county's also been waiting for a deed for Greenwood. Until each of our respective entities have those deeds and we've accepted them, the road remains technically privately owned, and we've put them on notice that they have to plow it, they have to maintain it. Glenn hasn't accepted their maintenance bond, so this goes on year after year, but they're on notice that they're supposed to be doing the plowing. Now, that would not include the piece if you came down the new part of Greenwood Street. If you made a left, that new piece of Bliss Boulevard is there. So if you make a right going towards the movie theaters, that old piece is ours.
And that part is plowed.
That
It's
part,
the other
yeah.
part that isn't. So if you could, I
I'll
don't know,
redirect another letter.
if you could draft a letter and, you know,
Maybe there's different management at the store and they didn't realize it.
yeah, I mean, it was bad.
I put them on explicit
They
notice
did.
with Crystal. Yeah, I got that Crystal Upoff or whatever that we forwarded.
And that Tara
Yeah.
Kuzinski or whatever she's.
Yeah,
I will follow up on that tomorrow, but that's definitely their job.
yeah, okay. But if you could do that, that'd be great. Thank you.
I will add that the roads that I've seen have been done excellently, and Overly was pretty rough a couple weeks ago, and now it's better than it was a couple weeks ago when we had more snow, so kudos. I thought there was a couple other issues, though. There's the farmland preservation plan. Is that coming to us, or what's this?
We reviewed it on the Land Use Board and the Environmental Commission. The Environmental Commission forwarded their comments. They were given to Susan Gruhl at the Land Use meeting. Some of the comments were incorporated. Some of the data that was not correct was not of Hiram Gruhl's control. It was DEP or someone else. Those things weren't changed. But as far as I know, we had given it the okay at the Land Use Board, and I guess it was going to come forward to us here at the council.
Okay.
Well, that's actually a question, though, and I pose this to Kevin. Does that plan come to Township Council, or does that stop at land use? Because there seems to be some discrepancy over where that plan goes after that.
My understanding of that is that it does ultimately become incorporated into your
Master plan, right?
So
Which is land
the
use.
jurisdiction for the master plan is solely the land use board. My recollection in the past, though, is they have, as a matter of courtesy, kind of circulated to us and we comment on it the board. I mean, but ultimately, I think for us to get the points and stuff, I think it's purely mostly a question of points for the farmers with their applications.
Right,
And I
for the
think
pig grants, we need
Yeah,
to
I
maintain
think
it for a pig
SABC,
application.
To get those points, ultimately wants to see that in your housing master plan. So
Does the master plan, is land use board also?
they're the master.
Yeah,
plan.
they're the authority on that.
And you don't need any ordinances to implement that farm preservation plan. It's really just a little piece of the master plan with a map.
The other question was, I was at the meeting. I was trying to follow the Oberly Santini discussions about, and I think, Kevin, you've spoken to us before about, did they already give up their
I actually
development?
whispered to the mayor. I did see, Wanda sent me a copy of the SABC's response to Jack Oberly. They had raised some questions about the status of the litigations, the old litigations with Toll Brothers and Resnick. And user council asked me to respond in an effort to, help the landowner get through the preservation process, which at least from SABC's perspective seems to be getting more bogged down of late. Maybe because they have less money available, but they're really looking at these applications and the appraisals much more closely. Anyway, I did the letter. I explained in the letter that the Toll Brothers settlement was no longer valid in our judgment because it had expired. I explained that the Resnick development rights had in fact been transferred, which was part of that settlement. So I basically indicated we had fully performed with the settlement. The duration of it had expired, so it was no longer binding. And when I look at this letter, they're talking about us rescinding ordinances, but I don't know what they're possibly talking about there, unless they actually wanted us to rescind the higher density zoning that was put on the Overly tract as part of that settlement. You guys, the land use board may do that anyway as part of the master plan conformance with the Highlands, but I don't think there's much more I can do. I will, if you'd like me to, I'll make a call to Susan Payne, the executive director here, and try to better understand what they're saying. I mean, I think we've tried to be helpful in terms of, I think it's Mr. Santini trying to get these properties preserved, but.
I believe the land use attorney has been in correspondence with Dominic Santini, the attorney for Robert, and I believe they're hashing it out as far as what he needs or what he's looking for as far as documentation.
I mean, to be honest with you, they probably don't have it. I think all the litigation is on my office. So if Mr. Sposaro needs anything, or Mr. Santini does, he can put him in touch with me. I think I actually sent those agreements down.
He already got a letter from Toll saying that they had abandoned
Well, that part they have.
right, but there was further discussion. There was one more party that needed to be contacted.
Okay.
And I think it's moving along at this point from what I understand.
Okay.
Okay, so basically we're doing some paperwork to help them.
Yeah.
Correct.
Their farms.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
Thank you.
Hey, Dave, you have anything else?
No, that's it, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Mary?
With the police department report, they responded to 498 calls for service within the past month time period approximately. The police department issued 249 traffic summonses and they made 29 arrests. The criminal investigation unit opened 20 new cases. Can you hear me better? Let's see, where we, oh, yes, they had, they investigated 14 motor vehicle crashes at my favorite intersection.
They're spread out.
Spread out. Because the state put in all that stuff, because that was supposed to help. On January 28th, 2015, the department received notice from the Division of Criminal Justice that they were approved for the 2015 Safe and Secure Communities Grant. And this grant helps provide communities with funding to help add law enforcement personnel to local communities. And the grant was in the amount of $30,000. The police department reported another save, and I either read about this in the newspaper or it was on Channel 8 News. But they recorded another save using the intranasal, what is it, naloxone?
Yes.
Narcan.
Narcan.
Yeah, and it is, though, the second time that a life was saved in the past 2 weeks using this drug. And our police department has been trained in this so that they are able to do this. It's for somebody who's overdosing. And they can give this to them, and that's it. They have saved 2 lives. And hopefully those people will put it to good use.
I hope so.
The police department also, and this is a fun one, has been challenged by the Pohakong School 8th grade class to a charity basketball game. The game will likely take place in late March or early April, and all the proceeds will go to the 8th grade class. And so when we know the exact date, it will be put on the police Facebook page for anyone who would like to attend. And do you have your team already made up?
We're putting it together, but I hear they're pretty good.
The 8th graders or our guys?
8th graders. Varsity's definitely on the team.
I was going to say, it depends on how tall they are,
Yeah.
maybe. All right, and that would be it, other than wanting a little bit of time in executive session.
Very good.
Chief, is anything any better up at the Walmart Plaza since they added security?
It's about the same.
No improvement?
Not at this point.
We were just talking about that.
Yeah, about giving it time.
Yeah. Chief, I wanted to ask you, how has this year been as far as response to with plowing, with vehicles on the street? How have you found, as far as summonses being issued and things like that?
Well, normally we try and if we know the snow's coming, we try and put something.
Mm-hmm.
We try and give everybody a warning. In the past, we've gone door to door. This past storm, I believe they wrote 6 tickets, local ordinance. Apparently, from what I understand, the ones that were written were warned in the past, and the vehicles were still there. But the majority of people moved their cars.
Good, okay.
So it's not bad.
I think just with the the social media presence. I mean, I find out about the ordinance through that on there,
Even
so,
when it's coming, we put it up every single time.
yeah, it's
as a
good.
Reminder. And like I said, most people are pretty good.
Now, have you found that since you've been doing that, that you've seen a decrease in more cooperation with the?
Yes,
Excellent.
always.
Okay. Good. All right, thank you. Anyone else have anything else for the chief or Mary?
No.
Okay.
I just have a question. I think I asked this last time. Detective Sergeant Robb, I think, offered to meet with us to find ways to help us with our budget. Does anything happen with that?
I think we, for executive session, we'll
Okay.
discuss that. Sal?
Have you found anything out on the Carpenter estate yet? You know, fix it up, tear it down. It's one heck of an eyesore right in the middle of town.
Shimer Manor, I think.
Yeah,
Okay, well, that's not Carpenter. Okay.
they own it.
No, their name is Kasenga.
Oh, well, she must have got
Carpenter.
married.
No, I thought it was.
Oh, you're touche.
Oh. Well, that's
I
because
thought
Sal really knows the history. of
Yeah, well done.
What are we gonna do about that?
She's from Penn.
It's one heck of an eyesore.
I think a lot of people probably drive by it and don't even see it, so.
I'd say you need glasses if you can't see it.
I just got a new prescription. We're supposed to be
It's
watching.
in bad shape. We should do something with that property.
Well, I think what Sal wants to do is maybe set a deadline, right? Get a
Yeah,
date.
like right now. You know, the property, you know, it's in a prime area, but she has to do something with it. Because it's not worth what she wants for it.
And how much does she want for it now?
I think what it's assessed at. I
Yeah. How much?
think what it's assessed at. It's over 100.
But it came down from the.
Yeah, but still, I mean,
300s or
It's not
400s.
worth.
It's not worth-
$100,000. You're gonna,
There's quite a bit of land with it too.
there is, but it has to be cleaned up. Give her another month. You're gonna call her up, or we write her a letter?
well, I'll reach out to her and say, you know, see if she's made any progress with anything on her end. If any private investors or anything like that, and then if we haven't, then we'll, you know, move forward with, you know, whatever the procedure is with zoning. Okay?
Okay. Now, what about the Shimer School? Let's sell it.
We're working on that, Sal, and that's all I'm gonna say right now.
Well,
When it's time to be something that needs to be discussed,
you know,
instead of you bringing it up in your report, then it will be. But right now, like I said, we're working on it, and that's it. for now. Because we
I'd
understand
like to know what you're doing. Okay, let's see, I talked to Joe Rossi tonight. He has to start finding some of these people that aren't, you know, cooperating with them whatsoever.
He has to issue summonses, he just can't issue fines.
Right, you just can't be a
Right,
nice
the
guy.
judge will have to.
Yeah, the
establish
judge
the
issues it.
fine.
You have to draw the line in the sand.
And it wasn't.
He said he didn't have a problem with going to court, but it would be the judge who would issue the fine. So he does the settlements, and then it goes to court.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you, Sal. I just wanted a couple quick things. I was at the Rec Association meeting last week, and we had introduced that background check ordinance for the coaches, and they had some concerns about the cost that this would incur on the volunteers. One of the things I suggested that we do right now in our ordinance, we have it's every 3 years.
Right.
To extend it to 5, so that they don't have to shell out the costs to have the background checks. And then also they had,
That's been adopted, by the way. I believe.
no, it is.
would
So it would
have
have
to
to
be
be an amendment to it, yeah. The other,
Well, I think Mayor, I don't know if you know, but Chief Greenmeyer had, and I mentioned it in my last.
yeah, he had a
report,
good,
He had 2 or 3 revisions, one of which was, and I think it would be particularly appropriate if we're going to go from 3 to 5, is the chief has suggested if there was a reasonable basis for asking for a supplemental background check between official checks, if you get wind of something, that should be in the ordinance. So I think if we're going to go from 3 to 5, that would be a particularly good amendment.
I would throw that in
So I
there,
think
yeah.
if you guys don't have a problem, when I amend the ordinance, I'll put that in, that we could do an interim check if
I thought the
reasonable
chief
cost.
had good suggestions.
Yeah.
That's why I told council
And-
to take a look at it.
Yeah, and the only other thing, I know there was a badging issue, and I guess that'd be a minor cost, but that makes some sense to me, so you know everybody.
Right. About $100 it'll cost us.
Is that going to be, I get that, we're going to issue that at our cost?
Once they come back with the proper background check, we'll issue them an ID that they have to wear at all times when they're on the field. That's the only way we'll know if they actually had the background check.
now my question, and the question was brought up, there's some leagues that are already requiring that type of, wearing IDs. Would they have to wear 2 then, or would the league, would that supersede local,
The league requires it?
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, and they have to wear 2.
so they have to wear 2?
Or having.
We have to keep it uniform, yeah.
Wear one and wear the other one, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of those leagues
They
are
hand out
more of,
I ordered them.
Do background checks.
I ordered them. I got them
We
cheap.
wouldn't have access to it, so we'd have to do it. And secondly, I think a lot of them are also more training in terms of the particular coaching activity you're doing. They get kind of like a certification, so.
Yeah.
I don't think it'd be duplicative in those situations. And we'll have no way of knowing unless our department does it. So,
Well, yeah, and I think what we'll do is if you could circulate some of those,
I'll,
then-
when I revise the ordinance in accordance with chief's
Yeah.
suggestions, all seem to make sense to me anyway. And then we'll add the 3 to 5, going from 3 to 5. We'll have that for next meeting.
excellent, okay. In the interim, though, how do we handle sport registration for coaches with the anticipation?
Well, the ordinance is on the books, they can do it now.
Okay,
Well, what we are going to do, we have registration forms.
okay,
We're going to have them complete the registration forms. At least we'll know who everybody is at this point.
all right.
I would think that with the ordinance, if it was adopted already, there's going to be amendments. How does that work if there's an
Well, what
amendment?
I would suggest, I think the third amendment that I would call, Chief, was we don't actually collect the money. The ordinance is something that we collect the money, but.
The
you
original,
have to
correct.
pay that. So what I would suggest is we start implementing the ordinance, because none of the changes we're going to make are going to affect their need to get it. And then I would just tell them as a department to just pay the state directly, which is what we're going to put in the ordinance anyway.
Eliminate the middleman.
Eliminate us.
Yeah,
And
They won't do it without paying them at the facility anyway.
so we know we're going to make that change anyway.
Right.
I would just direct them to do so, but get them going with the ordinance.
And then all we'll do is, once we actually get the background back, we'll just make them the ID card, and then they can stop down and pick it up. They'll be all set for 5 years.
and you have the capability to do that down there? Okay. All right, cool. All right. The other thing was last Tuesday, Dave, myself, Wayne Williver, Joe Rossi finally were able to get Mr. Cotty from the railroad in Powhatan Township to file a application to come before the Land Use Board for the issues that were going on down at the railroad. He is already, and he's been very proactive on starting to seek information to come before the board. So I think that was a very productive meeting that we had, and I think, what did we say, Dave? March he'll be coming before the board. He's gonna have to cite, yeah, he's gonna have to cite all the neighbors, and there'll be a full planning board hearing in reference to that issue. That's all I have. If we want to then, Lorraine, if you want to start with budget discussion?
Sure. Right from the beginning?
Wherever you want to start.
All right. Our budget last year was just under $6.4 million. And what the governing body did is they took a look at that to see where they could adjust it to make sure we would start off 2014 in our best possible position. They did things such as removing 10 to 15% from each of the department's budgets. We adjusted for cost savings from prior years, from deferred charges that we no longer had to raise in 2015. We had some decreases in pension costs because Governor Christie had all those adjustments, and they did actually save us money, not a huge amount, but a little over $11,000. We had some increases that we are unable to avoid, such as contractual labor increases, increases in snow removal fees. We have to buy more salt. We have more wear and tear on the equipment. And we had a rather large tax appeal that the state agreed that we could raise over, I don't know if it was 5 or 7 years, but that's $163,000 right there. So counting in all the, let's call them variables, but all the associated costs that we really can't change, we still have a total base of appropriations of $6.1 million. So we are decreasing our appropriations right from the get-go from the prior year of over $200,000. The problem is that our revenues also decreased rather dramatically, a lot more dramatically than our appropriations decreased. We have a loss of red light revenue of a little over $600,000. We have a decrease in the amount of surplus that we can anticipate to offset the increase in taxes by almost $650,000. A couple of other increases in smaller revenues that we can take into effect. But the overall beginning of our 2015 budget, we started with $6.1 million in appropriations and only $5.3 million in revenues. That difference, or a budget gap, as some people refer to it as, is a little over $743,000. So the governing body gave me a list of 10 different scenarios that they felt would be cost savings in a genuine sense. And what I did is I figured out exactly how much the value of their change in policy would equate to. I figured out how many cents it would cost for the average homeowner. I'm sorry, the number of cents that it would cost for the tax bill, and then figure that on the average value of a home. The average value of a home in Powhatan Township is just a little under $168,400. Do you want me to enumerate all of the changes you guys came up with? Okay, here we go. The first one was the elimination of all personal use of all vehicles, and we're hoping, or it was hoped, that that would, along with the reduction in the cost of a gallon of gas, would save about $10,000. That's 0.0029 cents on your tax bill, or for the average value of a home, $4.82. I should go back real quick. Our beginning budget gap of $743,000 is a tax increase of 21 cents. On the average value home, that's $358 a year. So the things that I'll enumerate would be different options that the governing body came up with to decrease so that your taxes wouldn't go up quite as much. The next suggestion was a decrease in funding recreational programs. That was $8,400 overall. That's 0.0024 cents or $4.05 on your taxes. The appropriation for the Bloomsbury Emergency Squad was removed as I don't believe the organization really is in existence anymore. That was $10,000. Again, $4.82 on the average value of a home. We have a capital ordinance from, I think, 2009 that was never spent, and the project is just going nowhere. We could cancel that, and it would be a one-time savings of $138,000 that we wouldn't have to raise in capital this year. Even though it's a one-time saving, it's 2 cents, almost 3 cents on the taxes, or $48.23 a year. There was a rather large piece of equipment that the DPW had been looking forward to. It was a trackless machine. It did many, many things that would be beneficial. We have raised in prior years $95,000, and in the 2015 budget, originally there was an additional appropriation of $35,000, which would just pay off the financing. We would be paying ourselves back. If we used most of that $95,000 savings, again, a one-time only option, that would be $54 towards your tax bill. We have a rather large dump truck that we were saving for. If we spread that out from 3 years to 5 years, we would save $30,000 or 0.0086 cents, which would be another $14 off of the tax bill. It had been anticipated for a policy change to reduce the number of land use board meetings from 2 to 1 a month. The anticipated savings from that was $9,500. That would be $4.58 off of the taxes. This is the part no one's going to like. The reducing staff levels in 2 of the largest departments. There would be an insurance factor for the medical insurance. There would be 1 police officer and 1 DPW employee. The total of the 2 personnel with the insurance and employment tax savings would be about $67 on the average home. The last option that they had come up with was moving the construction office to the state. That would save almost $29,000 or $2.94 on the average home. If all of those scenarios played through and all of those policy changes were made, there would still be almost an 8.5 cent increase. So on the average home, there would still be $141.47 tax increase just on the local portion. That doesn't take into account the school, which almost always goes up, and the county, which we have no control over. But even faced with all of those very harsh scenarios, there'd still be an 8.5 cent increase. So what the governing body is looking at to start with is a 21 cent increase. And if anyone has any options, I'm sure the governing body would like to hear them.
I just had a question about the construction department. Does that include everybody?
That's everything except for your code enforcement officer and zoning.
Zoning code enforcement.
Yeah, that's.
Zoning and code enforcement.
They are separate, okay, but that includes the fire and all of that. And it's only 28.9, or is that because of partial year?
That's just the standard deficit that the taxpayers pick up, that the construction department doesn't pull in enough in the permit fees. Or I shouldn't say enough. That's the difference that is between the revenue anticipated and the expenditures.
All right, so we always put this out, whereas some of it bigger. Okay, yeah.
Kevin, do you think you could also elaborate on the way the cap works as far as the governor's 2% cap, and then also why there's certain options not normally?
Well, basically, when Frank and Lorraine and I participated by conference call and met with our auditor, Bill Schroeder, and Bill got some figures together for us. When Governor Christie enacted his local budget reforms, The primary, the one that made all the headlines was a 2% cap on how much any municipality can increase your taxes in any given year. So you take, 2014's budget, multiply that by 2%, and I'm generalizing a little bit here, but that would be how much you could raise the taxes in the next year. If you exceed that 2% increase, you have to go out to referendum to you, the citizens. And there have been a few of those, not a lot of them in the state, because I think most people feel that they're not going to pass, and I don't know that any have passed, to be honest with you, I'm aware of. So when you're listening to Lorraine, I mean, that's certainly well above a 2% increase. However, there's what's called a tax cap levy bank, which, because we kept the taxes flat for the last 3 years, we basically have 3 years worth of tax increases that you can build into this 4th year. So you can take the 2% we have this year and 2% from each of the 3 prior years. So theoretically, this 21-cent increase that Lorraine discussed, even though if you look at that on just a 1 year over basis, it certainly exceed 2%, because you have the ability to utilize tax increase bank. It's not money that's been put aside. It's just kind of a theoretical thing, but you have the ability basically to increase taxes by several $100,000 without actually violating the 2% statutory cap and having to go out to referendum for the taxpayers. It seems a little bit strange, to be honest with you, but we did have Bill Schroeder, our auditor, go directly to DCA. That is DCA's interpretation, Division of Local Government Services. So even if we as a council feel differently, that if we're going to have a 21-cent increase, we'd like the voters' input on that with a referendum. We're not allowed to go to referendum. It's just that simple. And we also can't go out to non-binding. It's either you can do it or you can't. So, this is a decision that's obviously all your budgeting, and as you can see, it's obviously all, open to public comment, and there'll be budget hearings and everything else, as is always traditional, but we won't be having a referendum because essentially, even though it's a monumental potential tax increase you're looking at to balance your budget, depending upon which of these cuts you might proceed with, it's still not above the 2% tax cap with the 3 years worth of bank we have. That's the long and short of it, Mayor. It's a little bit, complicated as everything dealing with Trenton is, but that's where we are.
Okay.
It basically, if I could paraphrase, we've kept taxes low in the past, and we're getting credit for the fact that we kept taxes low in the past, so we're allowed to increase our taxes more now, should we want to. Unfortunately, I'll just leave it at that. I mean, I was going to put my own opinion
on it. It's unfortunate because, to be honest with you, and I was a bit surprised. There's always been what they call an expenditure cap, which is a different thing. I wasn't even aware, and I don't think a lot of people are, frankly, that there is a separate tax cap levy, because legislation, as I understood it, when the governor adopted it, was basically a hard cap. So it doesn't seem to me to make a lot of sense that you don't get the chance. The public doesn't get a chance to referendum any year that you're over 2% from the prior year. The concept of a bank really, to me, takes a little bit away from what the statutory intent was, because, as I said, I think it was meant to be a hard cap so that, the public could have referendum input. But as I said, unfortunately, there is a cap, so you have theoretically a pretty expansive ability to increase taxes, and public will not have the opportunity to formally referendum it.
I think we can increase taxes.
Well, yeah, what you want to is
whether we can practically from what people can afford is a different issue.
Yeah.
Let's say that's the legal outline, and now it's a policy decision of where we want to proceed forward.
I have a question. When you have under the police and the DPW, the save-in insurance, is that a grand total for both departments? So split it in half, basically?
Yeah, there were different timing issues, different when the change would take effect. So one was earlier in the year, one was maybe a little after midway. So there'd be a little variation. It wouldn't be 100%.
Also, those are partial years of, I mean, essentially partial years effects, and outgoing years you'd save.
Yeah, I understand that, but it's just that the other two were separate and divided, and I just wanted to make sure that that covered both.
As far as the, incidentally, with all the weather and everything, Jim and I had set up, I think at least twice now, a meeting with DCA, who is actually only right here in Bloomsbury, and they're definitely willing to meet with us on this potential change. We just have to get that scheduled.
Not do it on a Monday.
It's just been, yeah, every time we schedule it, it seems to get snowed out. But just for the benefit of the council, that's basically an ordinance.
Is this the construction you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yes, if we did a changeover, there'd be an ordinance process, and then, again, pursuant to civil service, anybody who's classified in that department, we would have to go through some civil service layoff, issues, so. My understanding is they're ready, willing, and able to do it, we just have to get that off the ground. And the other open question on that was, and again, this might play modestly into your budget, is whether we would be able to retain any unused permit fees that
Yeah.
are expended. We need to find that out. Maybe that would help a little bit in the budget.
With the reducing the staff, if we were to increase the budget, could we then not have to reduce staff?
I mean, the only way I can answer that, Mary, is what I indicated. I mean, you have, with the tax up levy bank, the theoretical ability to do a 21-cent increase, which, as I understand from Lorraine, would be basically kind of keeping last year's budget, last year's salaries, et cetera, with standard increases and so on.
So we could keep our staff.
Right. You have the legal ability to go up almost 25 cents.
Right.
So keeping everything exactly the way that it is, with just the requirements to be changed for 2015, you have 21.3 cents. So.
Well, I could see, some of this taking place, but I really, we don't have to reduce staff. Do not want to reduce staff. I said that I can understand taking some of the things that are listed here, to take that away from the table as far as something to be in our budget. But if we can get away with not reducing our staff, I would prefer not to do that.
I'm kind of along with you, Mary, also. We could do anything in between, correct? Anywhere from 8 cents to 21 cents.
You can do whatever you want.
I really, truly, I don't want to reduce police, and because I think we utilize them, and also the same thing with DPW. There are so few that to reduce DPW too would impact. So if we can keep that area, I want to keep that area, even if it means increasing. I don't care about the construction department. We can go to the state.
I think the other issue too, I think it came up in the conference call, and I know I've talked to Bill Schroeder about it, and it's a frequent issue with municipal budgets. But as Lorraine indicated, the surplus has been eaten down pretty substantially over the last couple of years. So I know Bill's a little bit concerned that that's getting so low, and the way the surplus is used is it kind of allows the municipality the flexibility on any given year, and Lorraine, and working with your financial professionals to kind of offset tax increases by using a little bit of surplus. Over the years, we've had to, and this is not uncommon, many townships are the same way, but we've had to eat into that surplus, and at some point, you may need to build in a penny or something to try to maintain that. Just throwing that out there again. Obviously, that's not a legal decision. It's for you guys to decide what you can afford, but I just throw that out there that Bill was a little concerned that that surplus is really, I think, kind of shrinking. I think from like almost 2 million down to $1 million. Yeah.
We don't have any good plan right now to regenerate that surplus either. I mean, you could look at it if if you wanted to maintain the staffing levels for DPW and police and made all the other cuts that had been suggested previously, you'd have a tax increase of $208.36 on the average value home. That would be about $17.36 a month. You could view that as a one-time correction to make sure that your revenues are now at your level of appropriation, and then going forward, you would just have, with no other one-time expenses or revenue booms, you would have your correction. You would have your.
But costs always go up. I mean, they don't go down.
What's the percentage of that? Sorry.
I don't know, because percentages are so skewed, and they factor in what your total assessed valuation is.
Local, out of local property tax increase, as far as there's a 2% property tax cap, what is that percent number over the cap? Sorry.
Okay, I just don't want to go figure it out.
No.
Well, I think what is allowable from a legal perspective is,
It's right on that form I just on page maybe. I think Bill Schroeder.
Oh, yeah.
Those numbers are
You're
actually officially, we don't determine that, just so you understand. Lorraine and Bill Schroeder, our auditor, actually, the DCA, Local Government Services, tells us what our caps are, what our 2% cap. I think it's on the first page.
yeah, you're talking about 48 cents?
Yeah, isn't that what it, I think it's 0.48, so. Balance available. Yeah, it's a little bit confusing.
It's like a 4%.
It's far, it's, yeah.
Yeah, we're almost at 100% of our.
Equal ratio, yeah.
If you have a 21-cent increase, it wouldn't be far off from 21%.
I mean, I hear you, and Mary, that and Dave, and nobody wants to cut anybody. Unfortunately, that's, if you look at the savings, that's where the savings are. I mean, I think we have an issue with service versus cost and taxes versus affordability. The problem we have is that the population in this town has been going down. The value of the houses have been going down. The more you increase your taxes, the lower your value of your house is, because people don't want to move into this town when they have to pay high taxes. So if we don't, make some tough decisions, we're going to continue this cost increase, tax increase spiral, tax increase, value of your home decrease spiral. And I mean, we've already seen a lot of people move out of this town. And there's 10% fewer people here than there were 50 years ago. And more people are moving out because they can't afford it. I've lost 2 neighbors. I've been here 10 years, and 2 neighbors have left because of taxes.
Well, I've lost neighbors too, but unfortunately it was through death. And so then that house becomes available, but somebody buys it. Even another house on our street for the longest time didn't sell. And finally it sold. There's somebody living there. So, people do move in, people do move out. It depends on what's going on in their lives too. But in terms of services, I think our police department is extremely important. And especially in this day and age, the way things seem to be going, I don't think now is the time to be cutting people. And with our road department, the things that they're responsible for, I don't think we can afford to be cutting them too. And believe me, when you talk about taxes, we pay our fair share, a heck of a lot more than a lot of other people are paying. And personally, I would go for, again, it'll be a higher rate, but to keep that personnel in our township.
Well, you can look.
You have to, you can't always look at just the dollars and cents. You have to look at the other things too. It's not always a left brain. Sometimes you have to look with the right brain.
another way to look at it too is if you're worried about, I mean, a lot of reason that the taxes are high and the costs are high is because the wages are high.
And that is
The
true,
wages
but
are
we're
high.
not responsible for that pretty much. Those things were set kind of almost the pattern before we were involved. But now we're negotiating contracts, and that's where we can hopefully make a change.
Well, I just want to point out that the average pay for a DPW person, average 2014 gross wages for DPW person of our four was $89,000. The average gross New Jersey gross wages of a policeman was $118,000. These are averages. Some are less, some are more. And if each person, for example, if each policeman took a 10% cut, you wouldn't have to cut a policeman. Their average pay would still be over $100,000.
That is
And you
true,
wouldn't have to cut a policeman.
but we are negotiating a contract right now, so,
We are?
yes.
I don't think we're
Oh, no,
negotiating.
excuse me. DPW were involved with next year. At the end of this year, the contract will be up. So technically, though, we should be actually starting negotiations now. You don't wait until the contract's done or 2 months before it's done to start
Well,
negotiating.
nevertheless,
I'm
procedurally.
sorry, I'll get off of my. I just don't.
You know, and it's a healthy discussion, and I'm glad we're having it, and I'm glad we're having it civilly. You know, we have differences of opinion about, you know, what's the tax tolerance of the citizens here. That's all it is.
Two other quick legal things that could impact the budget this year, again, just for the benefit of the public and benefit of the council. As I said, most of the commercial tax appeals have been resolved.
What's going on with Raymore?
Raymore and Flanagan, that's when I was going to indicate that. There's still one reasonably large tax appeal still out. That's Raymore and Flanagan. They have 3 years filed now. You know, it's nowhere close to the exposure of the Phillipsburg Mall, but again, a couple of those years that we have the same ratio problem, there will be a reduction when talking to our assessor, more than likely. There's going to have to be. But so there will be, again, there's still a little more shrinkage, unfortunately, to go in your tax base. You know, the commercial ratables and resales just don't support some of these assessments. Again, nowhere close to the Phillipsburg Mall, but it'll have some impact. The other positive impact that I don't know, Lorraine, whether we have anything reserved or budgeted for the potential of having to pay the Pagano appeal, I don't know, but we did prevail in that case in the appellate division. They only have a 20-day window to petition for certiorari to New Jersey Supreme Court. They have not. As I sit here now, I was just trying to check with my secretary. We're either almost at or beyond the 20 days. So if there's anything we've reserved in terms of bonding or budgeting for that,
It's been factored in.
been factored in already. Okay, so that's not, you're not going to pick up anything from that.
We did.
Oh, you did?
It started at 24 cents.
Okay. Okay, so you've already factored that in.
She's already done that.
Knock on wood that you won't see that petition. And
I got a little anxious on that. I told her it was.
so, and those are the only legal issues I can think of that could have any impact on your budgets.
We do have those outside parcels too. They're going to be added on and added omitted, so we don't have to share them with the school for the first year. So that's a boom for us.
Yeah, and I did get a call from Bill Ellison. I think at least the parcel that's the Starbucks is contemplated for maybe closing imminently, if not already.
You get opening?
Closing on the sale.
Oh.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say.
So it hasn't even opened yet.
They'll have to come in for land use approvals once they acquire it.
Too much shoveling snow.
Okay. So there's a lot of potential moving pieces here, policy decisions. My question is to you, Kevin, procedurally. We have to vote on some type of budget within, was it a month and a half, Lorraine?
In March, we have to introduce.
So
Yeah, there were some extensions, but I think that was it, right? It wasn't as big an extension as we gotten. in the
No,
past.
in prior years, they've extended it 2-3 times.
Yeah.
So far, there's just that one in there they're holding.
I'm sorry, Mayor.
Um,
Yeah, so right now it's March, so, yeah, and so the timeframe is accelerating a little bit. Since we can't go to referendum, there's no, as I gave you guys a memo on, we don't have to worry about advertising for any type of referendum issue. We don't have the ability to referendum, but as I did indicate before, and I know Officer Rob, when he was here, mentioned that they got letters, I think the DPW did as well, and the construction department. Timing was not great in terms of it being around the Christmas holidays, and for that I'll take the blame. But we do have procedural steps we're mandated to follow with civil service if we're contemplating layoffs. Those letters were sent just to put them on notice. Hey, it could maybe possibly happen. Procedurally, if the budget starts coming together and any of these salary cuts stay on the table, we'll have to go further with that in terms of actually developing layoff notices. Then we have to start getting civil service involved. That will also be the case with the construction department.
Okay. So my question is, though, a budget has to be introduced for that March meeting.
Right.
How does that work procedurally, as far as does a majority have to introduce a version, or how does that work? I mean, because from what I'm hearing, there's going to be policy decisions.
Procedurally speaking, when you introduce the budget, there has to be a motion to introduce it, and you have to have 2 affirmative votes. You're going to have a majority of 3 to introduce a form of budget, which with whatever cost savings that you decide to select from the list that Elaine gave. You have to have 3 affirmative votes for that. Then once you have that, you have a couple of different notices that have to be published with respect to the budget. There'll be a public hearing probably in April, I guess, sometime, right? Well, I don't know when the adoption date is, May?
Yeah, you have 28-day window.
Yeah. So, and then what'll happen is there'll be a public hearing on the budget, and at the close of public hearing, you either have to have 3 votes to pass that budget as is, or if after further discussion with the council, changes are made to that budget, then you kind of go through the process in an expedited fashion again. You re-advertise the amended budget, and then you have another hearing. So you could have theoretically a couple go-arounds. And as Lorraine said, we may get some extensions of the budget process. It's not uncommon because it is difficult.
But you have to. I mean, you do eventually have to.
Oh yeah.
Because the longer you wait, the less savings you can anticipate. Yeah. So you have to.
Yeah. Well, certainly, the longer you wait, the less savings. Because you're obviously accruing expenses at the same rate.
Status quo is now, yeah. Okay. Well, then
I'm not in favor of decreasing the recreation budget. They work hard, these people, so, and we're very fortunate that we have the group of parents that we have, and I'm not in favor of.
But to the point, they were increased the past couple of years. We increased their budget. Now we're bringing it back. We put it down to what it was.
Actually, a little bit above what it was.
Yeah, and I talked to them about that at their last meeting, and they're aware of the. It was funny you weren't at that one.
And I'm not in favor of reducing any policemen or road department. You take the policemen, we need them more than ever now. What's going on? And they're always have someone pulled over. They're making a lot of arrests, and they're doing one heck of a job.
What I would suggest that all of
Let's
the.
look this over.
Well, this is what I'm going to suggest. These are the numbers. These are the moving pieces. There's a level of now of what we can tolerate as far as an increase and what we are comfortable in reducing as far as staffing, if at all. And I think you need to have that discussion with yourself, and you also need to talk to the residents about this. We need to have an open dialogue. It needs to be known with what we're up against. Unfortunately, I don't see anyone from the paper here, but maybe they'll follow us to Applebee's and see what we're going to eat as opposed to talk about our budget. But we need to have that discussion with residents and see what they're feeling, because that's who we're up here representing, and that's where we need to take this as far as where we need to go. Whether or not people want to pay, as what Frank said, where's the break point for where people can't take an increase, or as what Mary's saying, as far as we can't stomach or afford reducing staffing levels. So that's what we need to kind of come up with, and we need to do it soon.
The only other thing I could think of, Mayor, too, and I'll just throw it out there, I don't know if we have the technology on our current website, but even though DCA has said we can't formally go out to a binding referendum, and we can't do an informal.
Well, you can't,
I
there's
didn't
no
know if
way
you-
to regulate it.
Yeah.
God,
as far
no.
as,
The only thing I
one
could think
person
of is,
could go on a bunch of computers.
Okay.
and skew the,
yeah. Yeah.
Unscientific poll.
Yeah, unscientific poll, the
Yeah.
only thing it's the only other thing available. It's
Unless you
probably
did Survey Monkey.
certainly not ideal, but.
I wouldn't know.
And you said without the ability to have 58,000 votes, it becomes kind of like the, NFL.
Get that many votes,
It's a popularity contest, I guess, in a way, but that would be the only other way to.
I polled a lot of people informally when I knocked on doors, almost every door in this town, when I was running for election, and taxes were probably, if not the one of the number one concerns.
You know what, it doesn't matter where you live, taxes are always the big concern. You could live in Holland Township where they pay a heck of a lot less than we do, and taxes are still their big concern there. So, it's like that seems to be the big, thing, taxes.
It is
And
big.
I don't think it matters where you live.
I don't know if Holland
Freeburg, or
Township
whether it be
tax-
Lopat or Greenwich or here or Bloomsbury, it's always taxes.
I don't know if other towns have had a decrease in population, probably because of taxes.
Well, populations shift, but as far as the decrease between the last census and the census now, yes, it's decreased some, but it's not anything, we're not like, you can put a percentage attached to it, but say 3,000, and then you say, and it's 30 people, that's quite different compared to 30 people and the population is 10,000.
Oh, it's 3,500 roughly years ago, and now it's 3,000.
Actually, no, it was less than that. It was 3219, something like that.
Well, I mean, the facts is that the residential population of the township has decreased,
Right,
but the
people have to
commercial
pay.
property has significantly increased. So it's been a shift as far as
Well,
what,
that's true, but
that's
again,
the-
you can't say it's all people moving out of the township, because I know a lot of residents that I used to know who no longer are here.
no, I understand that. But what I'm saying is that it is a fact that the population has decreased. It is a fact that Walmart is a significant burden on the police department. So, I mean, these are facts that we have to weigh as far as shifting responsibility or
At
whether,
Plaza,
yeah, so
yes.
that's just, I mean,
All of that.
those are facts.
And the fact that we have 2 interstates.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of drug traffic. And the world is not such a safe place.
In 1970, there was 3,924 people. In 2013, there's 3,282 people. That's 700 people
Well, then it
decrease.
didn't go down that much then from 2000.
Yeah.
If you go by 1970, a lot of those people aren't alive now.
Yeah, but you can't, well, I don't know if you want to,
Not all of them, but still, quite a few.
I don't know, there's a lot of people still alive from that.
Well, you know what, there's a lot of people, it's like, it's like, oh my gosh, they're gone.
Yeah.
It's not moving.
Okay. All right, does anyone else
Move
want
it
to,
along.
do we want to say anything else in reference to the budget?
Well, you know how I feel. And you know how South feels.
All right,
Public comment.
we'll get to that. Okay. Budget, all right, these resolutions, do we mind taking them together?
So I move we do the 4 resolutions that are on our agenda.
Second.
Okay, Becker?
Yes.
Black?
Yes.
Yellow? Yes. Angelic?
Yes.
Yes. Motions to authorize the purchase of 2 computers for clerk's office for municipal software, including software installation, configuration, and setup cost of $21.80.
I would move, or I would ask that we not do this right now because we're trying to work on a budget. And unless there's some really super good reason, I would not want to do this now.
I agree.
Wanda, how old are the computers? 4 years, okay.
Do they work?
I've been having problems, and so is Wendy. We have to reboot a lot, and our documents don't open. It'll say program not responding. So,
Have you had your computers checked for
yeah,
viruses and so forth? Okay, can you list for another year?
we'll try.
Sounds good to me.
So is there a motion?
Can we move to take that off of the agenda?
Okay, is there a motion for this table? Okay, move to table. Is there a motion to table? Okay, I'll take silences.
Well, actually, if there's no first and second,
It
just
dies, okay. Mayor's appointment to appoint Jay Krantz to the Economic Development Advisory Commission. I think I saw him in here. I don't know if I want to do that, but I think. And that is actually going to meet in February, what was the date, Wanda? 25th for the first time, so that should be getting out there. Oh, yeah, okay, so is there a motion for Mr. Krantz?
I'll move it.
Second.
Becker?
Yes.
Black?
Yes.
Yellow? Yes. Angelic?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. General public comment. Is there any general public comment? If you have any comment, please sign in and speak.
Oh, Ingrid.
Sure, he did.
She spoke
Oh,
already.
you spoke already. Sorry. Enrique Hernandez, River Road, Pohatcom. My comment has to do also with the article that appeared on the Express Times and what I thought was essentially a cheap shot against our elected officials. And I think it contrasts clearly an editorial writer worried about appearances when what we saw today is truly government at work. And I have to congratulate you for that discussion of the budget. I was very impressed with that. The variables were outlined for everyone to hear. There was open policy discussion. There was clear civil disagreement as to where we should go. And I think everyone in the audience understands that someone is going to get hurt. It's either going to be the taxpayer or it's going to be workers or maybe a combination of both. But that is how government works. That is, in fact, what public officials do. This is the real work of being a public official, not maintaining appearances or superficial actions that are criticized in the press. That was a shameless critique. So I'm here to congratulate the members of the council for their action now, and I wish you courage and fortitude and wisdom in making the decisions for the budget because they will be difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes, sir.
Les Nichols, Melix Woods Road. I'd just like to take this time to weigh in on a couple of items that were discussed here. For the record, I've been a taxpayer in this township since 1972, and for about 10 years, they taxed on 2 properties at well over $100,000 at this point. So for $100,000 worth, this is my opinion. I heard different things mentioned, purchasing new equipment, expensive equipment. I don't think we should spend that at this time. As far as financing the truck, if that's the truck we already have, I think we should pay that off because I believe in the pay-as-you-go system. I have some quite old machinery myself, which I still use. It's paid for. If I need it, it's there. And it doesn't cost anything when it's paid off. So that being said, the other one is the personnel. What I found a little unusual, everywhere else, state, federal, and everything, they talk about making cuts, and they have to make cuts. They always start with non-essential. This seems to be 180 degrees out of whack. We seem to have started with essential, like the police, and then the road department. We're like going in the opposite direction here. So maybe we should put it around a little more in perspective. What do we really need? And I agree with Councilman Van Loo. I think she was going in the same direction. There's pennies and nickel and dime stuff. You cannot put a value on this for whether it's your equipment to be paid for and your personnel. And I think the chief will back me up on this. For personnel and equipment to be effective, you need them at the drop of a hat or at a phone call. You can't say, well, it's not working out. We got to put a thing in the paper. We need somebody else. We need other police. When you need them, we could have another storm like Sandy. We can have a frigid thing. There's been a lot of crashes, airplanes falling out of the sky, on the mall, on the school. You can't put an ad in the paper at a time like that, or we have a storm, say, hey, we need another guy in the road department to buy a truck. I think you need your personnel in place, you need it available, and you need the equipment we own ready to go, even if it does take a little bit extra maintenance. That's my thoughts on the subject. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Anthony Goodell, 313 Ohio Avenue. I was just curious, when the next phase of the cuts, do you guys have to put that to a vote as far as personnel, equipment, everything that you had discussed? Is that the next step? I'm just trying to wrap my head around what's the next decision as far as, do you guys vote on that, or?
Well, anything, that was an outline. And then our auditor and Lorraine and the council have to incorporate any of that list into a formal budget. And then that will be introduced by a vote, and that's what the outline I gave you about introduction, public hearing, adoption, or amendments, and you go through that process again. But yes, that's just the outline. The council has to pick and choose what parts of that to put into the budget, and then that's all done through the public process.
Thank you. So mayor and council at the end, after you hear from the public and you go through this, mayor and council will go to a vote and majority will decide what cuts to make. Is that?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. And Mr. Mayor, as you had said that you would open discussion, it would be based off of the residents and how they feel about this and moving forward. Is that correct?
Me personally, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Because it's clear where most of the council stands, and I'm just curious where you're not making a decision as of yet. You want to discuss this more with the residents. Is that correct? Or
Yes. Yep.
You don't have a position. And Mr. Vangeli, have you made a decision yet? With as far as, I'm sorry, sir, as far as cuts to personnel.
Comments tonight.
I made them.
Okay.
You missed
Yeah.
it.
Okay, I appreciate that. So I think it's clear. I'm just one of the residents, and as of the last time I was here, I had made it clear what my position is. So I would like to reiterate that I again am here saying that it's absolutely going to be a huge mistake to make those type of cuts as the gentleman before me had said, is essential personnel. Those are the people keeping our families safe. That is the police department, and that is the road department, and that we need to turn it around and start looking at different angles. And I do appreciate it. You came up with 10 alternatives. But to go backwards a little bit here with that pilot program with the red light cameras, and I tried to wrap my head around that too. When that came to the township, it was a pilot program. I heard some discussion that it was more of counted as revenue at some point when I forget the number. How much a year were we making on that?
330,000. No,
700.
it was over 300.
Approximately how much a year were we making on the
Took
red
in
light
a lot
camera?
of money, but a lot of the money went out also.
Okay.
What we were left with was,
Yeah, last year we had $825,000 anticipated for court revenues, which did include the red light camera revenues as well. We also had an associated expense of about $195,000 to pay for the processing of the, well, not all of it, but to pay the vendor that did the processing for the red light camera.
Okay, thank you. The question is approximate, how much revenue per year, just approximately per year since that red light camera was here? And I'm going to get to a point here in a second, is how much did it bring into the township per year before it stopped?
Between $500,000 and $600,000.
Between $500,000 and $600,000. How many years was it here before it stopped?
you can't go by that though, because when we first started, we had 2 intersections.
Okay.
And then we had to pay a fee to Greenwich Township,
Yes.
and the camera was turned off. So then we just went to the one.
Pilot program, but I think by the
We
time
were
we got our
late.
contract in place, we probably got 4 years and change of that.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly what you want to know. I mean, in
Thank you.
2011, our court revenue, which is a lot dependent on the red light cameras, was $540,000. The red light cameras were only in effect for a small part of that year. In 2012, when we had 2 cameras, our court revenue was $1.5 million, $1,504,000. In 2013, when we were down to 1 camera for part of the year, it was $838,000. In 2014, it was $702,000. Now in 2015, we're expecting our court revenue without the red light cameras to be about $150,000.
Okay, so we're somewhere around $3 to $4 million over the course that we have profited from the cameras in the past. Approximate.
That's revenues.
That's just revenue. You still have to pay for the processing. I would say somewhere between 2 and 3.
Okay, so say $2 to $3 million. So I always try to wrap my head around this, and this is why I wanted to ask you guys. Is out of that $3 million, how much money of that is left today? It's a pilot program, correct? So it's not a program that was going to be sustained. It was a pilot program. So it wasn't money that was guaranteed. It was a pilot program. So how much money do we have today?
Pilot program, but that's why we had the vote, the referendum, that when this pilot program was up, if the township wanted us to continue, of whether or not we would do that. But then the state, the legislature decided that even the pilot program was going to stop. And so therefore it didn't matter what the residents had voted, and that's why it got stopped. We were anticipating another year under this pilot program contract, which we lost totally.
Okay. So today, how much money do we have left of the approximate $3 million?
I think if I could just say it, the red light camera money wasn't dedicated. When it comes through, after we pay our expenses, it goes into the general budget. So I think the only really way you can look at it is look at what we have left in surplus, because that as that money came in, it was used for a budget. So I think you can look at it, as I indicated earlier, we had 3 or 4 years of 0 tax increases, and we tax cap banked about $800,000 or $900,000. I guess one way of looking at that is that's red light camera money allowed us to have budgets with no tax increases in part, and we also have still some surplus. So I think you know, it's not really, it's allocated in our general budget, and what's left of surplus and the fact that we budget in the past with no tax increases, I think is probably the best way to look at that.
And you're right, Kevin, that it wasn't separated in
Right,
a
it's not
separate trust, lockbox,
Right,
whatever.
right.
It was used to pay the $1.5 million of police salaries. It was used to pay DPW. It was used for safety concerns. I mean, people say revenue, it's revenue. People say it's for safety. It was actually both. Revenue came in, helped us pay for safety. Now we don't have that revenue coming in. So we have to make some safety choices.
I would say one other thing, I don't know exactly how we dealt with in the budget, but.
Or tax increases.
We had, I think, by the time we got finished with the Phillipsburg Mall tax appeals, there were 5 years under appeal, and there were, you know, I mean, from their perspective, they were looking for probably $8 to $10 million back. We negotiated that down to about $1.3 million. But that was, again, another expense that, you know, we really kind of built in, so that, you know, there was a lot of expenses going out as well in the end, just so you understand.
Okay, that answered most of that. So my next point is going to be very simple, is this is just one part of it, is that the money that was taken in from the red light camera, some of that stuff made sense to me. I'm just looking forward to is when we do finally make a decision, which it sounds like, you know, we're on track to do that shortly. But when we do start making these decisions and moving forward, when we're running this town, as we elected you guys to do, is to make sure that we're making sound decisions financially for our township. I'm hoping that now that this is a time of challenge for our leaders that we voted for, this is when we're going to find out who our true leaders are and who's going to step up and make the right vote here as far as these cuts, which I think is at top of that list as a no-go, as making any cuts for the safety of our citizens. So the upcoming months is going to be a true challenge to find out who is who, and I have voted for some of you up there, and I believe that you will do the right thing. Also, moving forward from that, I believe that when it comes time in the future, what are we doing now to prevent this from happening again, where we're put into a position where we're looking at our budget and we're looking at almost $1 million in debt? You are our leaders that are supposed to be running this town, and I'm not trying to be offensive, I'm not trying to be nasty at all, but we trust that you are going to run this township and keep our residents safe and make some really good decisions, because it's almost like running a business. We're trusting you to run this business as far as financial, to make sure that we don't have these issues with tax increases. So we need you guys as our leaders to really, really listen to the residents, because you'll have both sides of this. But at the end of the day, we need two things from you. Make sure our residents are safe, number one. And number two, make sure that we're not put in a position like this again, where, you know, as far as our monies are so jammed up that we're looking at tax increases or taking away the safety of our citizens. We need to prevent this from happening again. And I have confidence that you all make the right decisions in the future. And I have confidence in the residents will speak clearly on what they want. And I hope you listen to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes.
My name is Wendy Azevedo. I'm an employee, but I'm going to speak as a resident. I've lived in Pahakan Township for 28 years. I've heard a lot of, this is not a personal thing. I'm actually one of the 10 items on the chopping block as an employee, but I want to speak as a resident because my husband has been a state trooper for 28 years. And you talk about how much police officers make, and it's because they put their life on the line every day, and I don't see everybody else doing that. He was in Newark on the turnpike, was safe all the time, came up here and was stationed up here and was attacked and almost didn't come home one night. So it doesn't matter where you are in a little town or part of the city. And that was 20 years ago. It's gotten a lot worse nowadays. These guys go out every night and their family doesn't know if they're going to come home. So maybe that's one of the reasons why they make a little bit more than the other people.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Ingrid Gray. I just have a question as with regards to the budget and the Department of Public Works. Was the idea of privatizing any of the things that they do discussed or explored, or do you know of any other towns that privatize some of the things that they do to maybe reduce the department costs?
Ready.
Dave,
We do with the lawn mowing. Several years ago, we tried to, in order to keep the guys to, the size department that they have, they couldn't do everything. And we do contract out now the lawn mowing, which I think
and a
in
lot
the
of
summer months lets them do more important things.
a lot of the plowing too. And
Yeah, contract the plowing out and larger jobs, we do subcontract out.
And we haven't given up on shared services either.
Any other public comment?
Another thing, Mayor, too, I just wanted to mention in terms of like getting how we got here real quick, but I mean, was this council, one problem was that too many years went by with prior councils where there was not statutory reassessment. And it was actually this mayor and council who finally got that process going. And the reason why that was so important is our equalized assessed values kept deteriorating, which is one reason why the tax appeal problems with the commercial ratables was such a problem, because our ratio was very poor. So that's been corrected, and we do have a reassessment. As I think Lorraine mentioned, and we're close to 100% assessed at this point, which is a good thing for you guys. And the other thing I would just say, too, from the legal standpoint, again, was this council and a little bit its predecessor, but very, very intense negotiations and efforts were made to maintain the Alpha Police contract. I've participated in those. We made a lot of efforts and concessions to try to keep those, because I think we felt that was a very good thing for both communities and allowed us to do some things with our department. And we weren't unable to get a partner in that. But so I think, and we went through an historic recession, obviously, and on top of the reassessment stuff, the values have been very difficult to defend. But I feel from a legal standpoint, those issues have bottomed out, and hopefully we'll stabilize things. I think we're going to do that.
Other public comment?
Kevin Melvin, 41 Winters Road. Thank you for CFO for laying out a good detailed picture of the multiple scenarios that you're asked to look at. Out of this, just a couple questions if you could. Out of the 743K delta that we have, how much of that would be, if you were to add up all of those scenarios, how much of that would be made up? I don't know if you covered that or not.
I don't have the dollar value. I can tell you that it would go from a 21-cent increase to an 8.4-cent increase. Give me a minute, I can add it.
Probably quicker than I am. And then just the, maybe Chief, you can help out here. The 30K grant that I heard Councilwoman Van Loo mention, is that a single-year grant or multi-year grant?
We received that grant probably for 20 years now. We get it every year.
Okay, so that
we have to do we apply for the grant. There's a narrative that you have to fill out why you need it, and then if after reading, if they decide that you're eligible for the grant, then you receive the money.
Okay. And Lorraine, I don't want to do it in the middle of, was that applied to your numbers, the 30K grant? Okay.
Yeah, it would come down from about 743,000 to just a little over 295,000.
Okay. And then I guess, can the council speak, I know there's been conversations about shared resources and specifically Greenwich Court coming in here. Can we get a status update of where that's at now? Because I think there was some contractual issues or something still at play with that. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm speaking out of school.
Yeah.
When can we anticipate that going forward, and will there be a revenue impact to that?
In terms of the legal status, I can tell you that Greenwich and Blackhawk are in accord on the contract and in all its terms, and we're both ready to sign it. That contract has to be approved by the administrative office of the courts. They've raised a nepotism issue, actually, because we have, I think, our court administrator's husband happens to be, I think he predated her, actually, but he is a very part-time clerk of the court, if you will. So there's a policy about not, nepotism and direct reports and things, and they've asked us to give them a letter explanation. Basically, that explanation is going to be that he really reports generally to the judge directly. Cindy doesn't really control him at all. So we have to get that letter in, and hopefully at that point they'll approve it. Judge Saccone will approve it. She's the vicinage judge for that process. And then hopefully the transition will start by, get them over here by late spring, early summer.
And are we forecasting any revenue from that in this year's budget?
No, there won't be a large revenue stream.
Yeah, it's not significant.
I'm sorry, say that again?
There won't be a large revenue stream from it,
Okay.
even like $10,000. It wouldn't be a substantial amount, and I have no idea as to what portion of the year we'll actually have it for. At this point, it won't even look like we'll have it for half a year.
And I guess,
I think, are we doing some work for them now?
Yes, sir.
That I guess they're paying for us at cost or slightly above, so it's not going to help much.
Okay.
Short answer.
It's kind of almost like down the road too, because we have to keep their judge for 2 more years.
But that's a cost that they're incurring, not us.
Right, but I mean, it's, just these different things that,
There's more opportunity for more revenue in the future.
Yeah.
It's getting it started. That's the hard part.
That's absolutely correct.
okay. And then just one, apologies, there's a number of things going through, but on the subject of Greenwich Court, I think, Chief, you had mentioned about possibly getting some of that money from the way station. Has that been further explored at all? Will we see a ticket increase coming from that? I know that we were saying most of that went to the
Greenwich
state.
Township, I don't know.
have to
if
open it.
It's open, I don't know.
Okay.
One way station is hardly open, and the other one's never open.
I think it's something like 2 days a month or something.
I think Greenwich is having trouble getting money from that way station.
But
They're
the
never
short,
open all that
the
time.
short answer, though, is there's a revenue split. So if they experience an increase once they join our court, we will share in that increase of ticket revenue. So that is going to part of the agreement, where we share all their ticket revenue on a percentage basis.
Even so, I think the state collects a lot.
Yeah, no, they do.
They write the state tickets at those areas, yeah.
Okay. Earlier in tonight's session, there was an inquiry by Councilman Becker about the proposal Detective Robb put on the table. And I think you said it was going to executive session. Just because I do agree with a lot of the comments, public safety is a concern of us. And I think there was an offer put on the table by the detective to potentially look at what the force themselves could do instead of losing personnel. And it sounds like that is moving forward, those conversations, or do I take that there's been no action since then?
Just as a standard rule, we're not going to discuss negotiations in public.
And then one last question. So I heard about Starbucks, which I know my wife and others are excited about coming in, which is going to probably hurt my personal pocketbook. But with regard to timing, and will we receive ratables for them this year? Is that projected into the budget at all?
I don't believe we projected anticipated revenues.
It takes a whole year
Yeah.
before they're actually on the tax rolls.
What will happen is, and I don't think Lorraine, from a budgeting standpoint, is allowed to anticipate that kind of a revenue, but what will happen is we will get some revenue because there'll be an added assessment in October because the subdivision has been perfected and the subdivision plat has been recorded. So the 3 separate lots now do exist. So there'll be a separate tax bill by way of a amended tax bill this October, which will pick up basically from the 4th quarter. After that, once Starbucks closes on the property, then they're going to have to go to the land use board to get an approval to reconstruct that facility from, they have it already? Okay, so once they close, if they have that approval, as soon as they get a CO, which again, that's up to their time frame, but the building's already there, so I wouldn't be shocked if that also happens this year. Once they have a CO, there'll also be a retroactive tax bill from the date they got the CO. So that'll be picked up maybe in December, and it'll be a bonus probably that we can take into account for the next budget. That's probably what it'll work out.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple more comments. One is, again, I agree with a lot of the comments that were said here tonight about, there's a lot of passionate opinions up here. We do have a shortfall that we're trying to get to, and there's going to be tough choices on everyone's parts. But I think the fact that the discussion is being open and vetted throughout both the public and as well as opinions being heard is important. And I have trust and faith that this council will put their best foot forward in preparing a budget. And I do also want to recognize that the council has tried to bring in additional commercial ratables. Starbucks is a perfect example. I know we've had some challenges with getting them forward with part of the subparcel of the mall. And I guess my last comment is, and maybe it's an open-ended question, and you guys have heard me say this before, the biggest part of our taxes as citizens goes to the school, which is the really outside the remit of this council. So you guys are dealing with a smaller budget to play with versus the schools themselves. And I don't know what recourse we have at all from a township perspective to be able to get that to change. And I know part of that is because of the system we have. We're shipping our kids over to Phillipsburg High School. You've heard me here previously ask the question about potential regionalization since the high school is moving into Apacong and no longer part of Phillipsburg, and we really don't have a vote into what Peaburg decides to do. So I guess that's a comment as, just a reminder that the biggest portion of our taxes goes to schools. And, any advice on what the council may have on how to adjust that would be welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Good evening. My name is Trish Becker. I live at 51 Creek Road. My husband, Frank Becker, is on council, but when I make public comments, I'm making them as a resident, and I don't like it that sometimes people will lump us together. I wanted to follow up on the previous gentleman's comment about the school. This week, I think Thursday night, there is a school board meeting. So I urge people to go. There are very few people from the public who go to the school board meetings. The other thing I'd like to mention is that this school, actually the New Jersey school report cards came out this past week, and Pohatcong School did not do very well. You can go online, you can Google New Jersey school report card, and you can see the results for yourselves. It's really subpar. So we are not getting the results, that we need to. We're not doing a good job educating our kids for the amount of money that we're paying. And so I just wanted to add that comment onto the last one. And I do have faith in this council, and I do appreciate the open discussions and the voicing of different opinions. And I got a little concerned when I heard, though, that one gentleman come up here and say, well, we're going to know who's who. It's almost like, are we going to target council people based on how they vote? I hope not. I know that each person has their own opinion, and I look forward to the open vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. Come.
Joe Perry, and my question is, earlier in the meeting, Sal had a good question. What are you going to do with the Shimer Manor School property? That might be a good source of revenue if you got rid of it.
I think what we can say is we're talking to a few interested applicants who may be interested in purchasing it for what we have zoned it for, which is veterans housing for our COA obligation.
Veterans housing. We got a lot of them around the state. In fact, throughout the country.
Well,
Well,
just so
listen,
you,
you're wrong. I was a veteran. 3 years I served my country. Yes, there is.
just real quick, New Jersey has something called COA, the Council on Affordable Housing. So we have to have so much affordable housing in Powhatan Township to give everyone the equal opportunity to live in Powhatan Township. Law's garbage. I don't think anyone up here supports it. Nevertheless, we have to do it. So what we did was we decided to use our COA obligation towards veterans as opposed to just general low Section 8 housing that you see in other places. So we decided to go with vets. We couldn't do seniors because you're only allowed so many senior units. So that's why we targeted that as our COA obligation. Just so you background on it.
So there's no other, you already made up your mind, that's what you're going to do. We're kind of bound to do that. It's not that we want to, we're kind of bound to do it. Bound to do it.
The property was de-restricted in conjunction with, a couple of years ago.
What is it, asbestos? Or in the building or what?
With COA.
No, it was de-restricted to affordable housing a couple of years ago as a condition of retaining about $500,000 of fees we had collected for affordable housing. So that's
So that deal won't work then, huh?
Just sell it to someone?
You can't sell it to someone.
No, we can sell,
We
but
could,
it
but
has to be for that use.
It has to be just for that use.
That's all we can say.
That's all you can say, you said?
Yeah.
Well, we had an executive session. We came out a couple meetings ago and indicated, that we were going to take action to explore the sale, and that's what we're doing.
I see. Just a suggestion, maybe you can make some money off of that property there, that's all.
That's a fair point.
I mean, it's good for a short-term, situation, but that's only going to be once and done. Yeah, exactly, but it would help out this year, that's what I mean.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, well, thanks, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? No, it's one and done.
Clear something up as far as who's who. I was just referring to the true leadership in our township, and where my vote would go next time, just to be crystal clear. So, thank you.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, we have I'd say a half-hour executive session for contractual and potential current litigation.
Okay, I move we go into executive session.
Chief, you want to go back 2 seconds there.
Second.
Okay.
Yes.
Black.
Yes.
Randall.
Yes.
Angeli.
Yes.
Kern.
Yes.
Green.
I don't know what I'm doing. Was it the governor's box?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye. Okay, no action needs to be taken from executive session. There is one new business item. I would like to appoint, in the absence of Sharon Smith, to appoint Ingrid Gray has volunteered to serve as the secretary for both boards for free for environmental and historic, and she'll work with Sharon, take notes, and submit them to her. So she offered her services, so I said absolutely. So I'd make that motion for her to fill that role.
So moved.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. And is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So in the